A heavily tattooed man paces back and forth inside his prison cell, counting down the moments until his release. A faded photo on the wall shows him with a young man. When the guards finally arrive, they escort him out, and we're introduced to him simply as the driver. Before he leaves, a prison officer offers him one last piece of advice, along with a business card. Call if you ever find yourself in trouble out there. But the driver has only one question. Where's the exit? Once he steps beyond the prison gates, he tosses the card aside without hesitation and walks away, stretching his legs after years behind bars. After a long trek along the highway, he reaches an old junkyard. Hidden under a dusty tarp is his pride and joy. The keys are tucked beneath the front wheel. With one swift motion, he uncovers the car, slides behind the wheel, and starts the engine. The roar of the motor signals his freedom. His next destination is already clear. His first target. Everything he needs is waiting for him in the glove compartment. A list of names, a revolver, and a plan. Traffic rules are the least of his concerns as he arrives at his destination and parks wherever he pleases, stepping straight into traffic without flinching as drivers shout and honk. He walks calmly into an office building, searches for a specific man, and without hesitation takes the shot. The job is done. A security camera blinks red in the corner, recording everything elsewhere. In a rundown motel bathroom, a man argues with a drug dealer, trying to make a purchase with a handful of coins. The dealer scoffs, but eventually gives in, handing over the drugs. Moments later, the same man shows up at the crime scene in a police uniform. He's no junkie. He's a cop. His arrival doesn't impress his colleagues, especially a sharp-tongued detective named Cicero, who crushes his cigarette right into his coffee. The two are reluctant partners, now assigned to investigate the very murder the driver committed. Meanwhile, the driver meets with two men watching the news report of the office killing. One of them greets him with a grin, calling him a bad boy. The mood quickly turns businesslike as the driver pays for the car that had been arranged for him. Then he demands names, the names of those responsible for his brother's death. The informant leans back and smirks, saying the price for that information just went up. The driver doesn't take it well, but before he can respond, the informant changes his mind. Actually, the price just went down. He signals his bodyguard, a massive former MMA fighter from Samoa, to take care of the situation. But as soon as the bodyguard sees the tattoos on the driver's neck, his confidence vanishes. Fear flashes in his eyes. "I know who you are," he mutters. "You're a ghost." And just like that, he bolts from the room, leaving his boss behind. The informant, now trembling, becomes much more cooperative. He not only gives up the names, but even offers a little bonus to make peace. Back at the police station, Cicero and her partner study the surveillance footage. It's clear now. The killer and the victim knew each other. Before they can dig deeper, the cop's phone rings. It's his ex, demanding that he take their son to baseball practice. She hangs up before he can argue, leaving him stuck between his messy personal life and the murder case, unraveling before them. After completing his first mission, the driver is already on his way to his next target. But now, a new character enters the story, the killer. The killer lives a life of luxury, a beautiful home, expensive cars, and an equally stunning woman by his side. Unlike most hitmen who prefer to stay in the shadows, he's obsessed with self-improvement and image. His walls are filled with framed magazine covers featuring his own face, proof that he takes pride in who he's become. Behind the perfection, though, lies a history of struggle. As a child, he had serious leg problems, something he overcame through pure determination. Now, his mornings begin with intense yoga routines that look more like a mix of martial arts and breakdancing. After his workout, he joins his girlfriend outside and tells her that yoga has become too easy. He wants something more dangerous, more exciting. Just then, a new assignment comes through. A photo of his next target, the driver. Without a moment's hesitation, the killer gears up, collects his weapons, and takes off in his high-performance sports car. Before leaving, he runs back for one last kiss from his lover, a brief flash of humanity before the hunt begins. On the road, he checks in with his therapist over the phone. He complains that the job is starting to drain him, yet he hides his real identity. Meanwhile, at the police station, Detective Cicero studies a photo of the driver's tattoo. Her superior, Sergeant Mallory, notices her frustration and apologizes for pairing her with her reckless partner, but insists she give him space to work his way. When Cicero digs deeper, she learns that the driver wasn't just an ordinary inmate. He once ran a smuggling ring inside the prison. 10 years earlier, he had been the getaway driver in a daring bank heist, known for his flawless reverse driving that left the police helpless in pursuit. Back to the present, the killer tracks an elderly man, his next assignment. The old man seems harmless as he returns home with a young woman helping with groceries, but he's far from innocent. while he insists she stay for a drink. The driver pulls up outside the same building, unaware that the killer is following closely behind. The killer ends his call with the therapist, ignoring her warnings, and silently prepares his weapon. Both assassins now move toward the same target inside. The old man's true nature is revealed. He's drugging the young woman's drink, waiting for her to pass out. 3 lives are about to collide, each carrying secrets darker than the last. The story flashes back to a grainy video recording, footage that Detective Cicero and her partner are now reviewing in the present. The shaky camera shows a scene from 10 years earlier. The driver and his younger brother are tied up, surrounded by armed men. Their heist crew has been betrayed. Someone set them up. The driver's brother, terrified but brave, pleads with him not to reveal where the stolen money is hidden. If you talk, he warns, we won't make it out alive. Their captors confirm his worst fear. The rest of the crew has already been executed. As the driver hesitates, torn between fear and loyalty, one of the kidnappers fires a warning shot inches from their heads. The pressure becomes unbearable. Finally, the driver breaks and reveals the secret. The money is hidden beneath the floorboards in the kitchen. The moment he speaks, one of the gangsters grabs his brother and slashes his throat without hesitation. A few men flinch at the brutality, but most stay cold, unfazed, and behind the camera, recording everything, stands the old man, the same one now being hunted by the driver in the present. The flashback fades, pulling us back to the current moment. The driver kicks down the old man's door, splintering it into pieces. The elderly gangster panics, claiming he was forced to kill the driver's brother by someone higher up, but excuses mean nothing now. 2 quick gunshots end his life. The driver turns to leave, ignoring the terrified caretaker lying on the floor. As he steps into the hallway, the killer is waiting. Before he can take the shot, a little girl suddenly runs between them, blocking his aim. The killer pushes her safely into a nearby room, but that moment of hesitation costs him. The driver draws his gun, and a fierce gunfight erupts. Bullets tear through the hallway. The driver doesn't try to kill, just to escape, using the chaos to slip away. By the time the killer reaches the window, the driver's Chevy Chevelle is already roaring down the street, tires burning against the asphalt. The flashback returns, revealing the final piece of the past. Moments after watching his brother die, the driver himself was shot in the head, the bullet tearing through the back of his skull. Before blacking out, he whispered a promise. I'm going to kill you all. Against all odds, he survived. Doctors rebuilt his skull with a metal plate, unknowingly giving him the strength to fulfill that vow. Meanwhile, away from the chaos, the cop struggles with his personal life. He arrives late to pick up his son, and his ex lashes out, furious that work always comes first. He tries to explain the importance of the case, but she's had enough. With no choice, he drives his son, Tommy, to baseball practice, trying to make small talk. Quietly, Tommy admits he doesn't even like baseball. He barely gets off the bench. Guilt washes over the cop. Just as the cop starts to reconnect with his son, his phone buzzes. It's Cicero. Another case, another dead body. Tommy's face falls, already knowing his father's choice. Instead of being honest, the cop fakes a smile and pretends he'll stay for the game. 30 minutes later, he's at the crime scene, greeted by Cicero's unimpressed stare. The victim turns out to be the old man, a notorious underground filmmaker who once recorded disturbing illegal content. The detectives soon uncover that he was the very man who filmed the execution of the driver's brother 10 years ago. Signs of a shootout mark the scene, though the identity of the second shooter remains a mystery. Meanwhile, the killer sits in his hotel room, replaying his encounter with the driver in his mind. He hadn't expected the man to be so cold, so precise, fearless instead of anger. The killer feels admiration. To him, the driver isn't just another target. He's a challenge worth remembering. Smirking, he calls his fiancée, Lily, and without a second thought, proposes to her right there on the phone. She laughs, already ready to say yes. The next morning at the station, Cicero spots a tattoo on the cop's arm, one that doesn't fit his story. After some digging, she discovers his past, a stint in LA's corrupt homicide division, a failed marriage with an informant named Marina, and a stay in rehab for substance abuse. When she confronts him, he brushes it off, insisting it's all behind him, that fatherhood changed him. Elsewhere, the driver stalks his next target, a woman. Watching from his car, he waits for her to send off her son before entering her house, gun in hand. But when she turns around, his blood runs cold. It's his ex, the woman he once loved, the one he forbade from visiting him in prison. For a moment, he believes the boy outside is their son, until she tells him the truth. The child isn't his. The pregnancy ended long ago. The realization crushes him. All the rage and purpose that fueled him suddenly feel hollow. Without a word, he turns and walks out. She calls after him, not to stop him, him, but to wish him luck, knowing exactly what path he's on. While the driver is drowning in heartbreak, the killer is celebrating life. His wedding with Lily is extravagant. Roaring engines, luxury, and chaos. There's no bouquet toss here, just the two of them laughing, firing handguns at bottles lined up on a fence. For him, love and violence are just two sides of the same coin. The killer, now officially a married man, promised Lily a new beginning in Pasadena. At the same time, the cop stood at his ex-wife Marina's doorstep, forcing his way back into her life. To his surprise, she'd been following his case on the news. "I thought you didn't care," he said quietly. She had, though, every detail. He asked for a second chance, a fresh start, but Marina had moved on. She'd built a stable life for herself and their son, far away from his chaos. Desperate to prove he'd changed, the cop handed over his hidden stash of drugs, promising to go to rehab. For real. This time, all he asked for was one more day. Just one day with her and his son before he disappeared again. Marina hesitated, but didn't say no. Under the glow of neon lights, the driver arrived at his next destination, a strip club. From the shadows, he watched his next target, the same enforcer who'd slit his brother's throat. When the moment came, the driver followed him inside, cornering him in the restroom. An old doorman named Joe passed by, but the driver stopped him. "Walk away. No matter who comes out alive, you didn't see anything." Joe nodded and left. The door clicked shut. What followed was a vicious knife fight. Blades flashed, blood splattered against the tiles, and in the dim light, the past came full circle. Stroke by stroke, the driver overpowered his enemy until the man collapsed, barely breathing. With his final breath, the dying enforcer didn't beg. He simply asked the driver to call his son and tell him he was sorry. The driver said nothing. He just walked out, sat in his car, and made the call. Elsewhere, the killer sat alone, flipping through old photos. His smile faded when he reached the pictures from his childhood, the ones showing his damaged legs. Running his fingers over the scars, he drifted into the memories he thought he'd buried. Then, almost suddenly, that vulnerability vanished. He grabbed his guns and began cleaning them. Movements sharp, obsessive, unrelenting. That's how Lily found him. She begged him to stop, to let this life go, but he'd already made up his mind. "Just one last job," he said. His hands never stopped moving. Meanwhile, the cop woke beside his son. The boy confessed again that he didn't even like baseball. His father smiled gently, admitting he'd never been good at it either. Later, he found Marina in the bathroom, her eyes glassy with fear. "We just keep hurting each other," she whispered. This time, the cop didn't argue. He took the last of his drugs and threw them away, then crawled back into bed beside her, maybe finally ready to change. The fourth day, the morning starts with everyone leaving their houses, lost in their own spirals. Cicero bursts in with a lead she's thrilled about. Both of the driver's victims were police informants and tied to his brother's murder. She's sure this is the thread that will pull the case together. But the cop, stubborn and impulsive, ignores her tip and goes to see a different witness. The strip club security guard who barely survived the restroom knife fight. Cicero protests, but he's adamant. This is his investigation, and he'll run it his way. As fate would have it, the driver hears a breaking news bulletin on the radio. The enforcer from the club survived and is in a clinic. Without hesitation, he spins his Chevelle into a perfect 180 and floors it toward the hospital, determined to finish what he started. At the same time, the killer gets the same bulletin from his employer, who speculates the driver will try to finish the job, a chance to intercept him. Both predators set off. The cop reaches the hospital first and moves inside. The driver barges through soon after, cutting straight to the operating room, where surgeons fight to save the man who slit his brother's throat. The driver ends that fight in a single brutal act, multiple shots to the head, erasing any chance of recovery. Gunfire shatters the hospital calm. The cop pursues. They race through corridors and down to the basement, where a brief, intense exchange leaves the cop on his knees, facing the attacker, until the driver vanishes. The roar of a Chevelle engine fades into the night as the killer escapes. On the road, the driver's phone rings. The voice on the other end is the dying man's son, promising revenge. The driver listens without a flicker of emotion and warns the boy to weigh the consequences before the conversation can go further. Headlights appear. The killer has caught up. A high-speed pursuit erupts. Both men are too skilled for a long chase. Bullets fly. The driver takes a grazing shot to the neck, but answers by shooting out the killer's tire, sending him spinning. The Chevelle disappears into darkness. The killer, shaken and furious, gets another call. His employer has canceled the contract. He grips the wheel, refuses to accept it, and decides he'll finish the hunt himself. Bleeding and raw, the driver heads next to the home of his brother's estranged father, the man he's long suspected of betraying them after the heist. Instead, he finds only his mother, quietly stitching his wound. She tells him his father's been dead for years, and swears that the dead man loved Gary and wouldn't have sold them out. Sitting there across from her, the driver unburdens himself. The bank job was never about greed, but about saving Gary from debt. Loyalty cost them everything. He pockets his brother's ashes and moves on, still haunted by who set them up. Back at the station, the cop finally admits what happened at the hospital to his partner, how close he came, how the driver got away. The team rallies, congratulating him for almost catching the man. Cicero forgives him for ignoring her call and lays out a grim pattern. Every target the driver has hit so far is a known informant. The list she spreads on the table is chilling, all of them tied to that same buried betrayal. The driver narrows his list down to one last name, a traveling preacher who runs a mobile church. He's been hearing the man's voice on the radio for days. The tent is empty when the driver arrives. No congregation, only the preacher's wife and child nearby. But the man speaks with the calm of someone remade. He claims to have left his criminal past behind, says he turned to faith in prison, and insists he never wanted the driver and his brother killed during that long ago ambush. The preacher's confession is simple and quietly remorseful. Years ago, he'd been the lookout, taken a cut, and then gone to prison, where God found him. They walked down toward the shore, the supposed place of execution. For a long beat, the driver wrestles with the past and the man in front of him. He forces the preacher to his knees and raises his weapon. But at the last instant, he
Go back to your family.
for reasons only he fully knows, and walks back toward the church tent. Inside, the killer waits, weapon raised, wanting a proper fight and the recognition he thrives on. The driver is calm, almost conversational, suggesting the killer's real wounds run deeper than any gunshot. The killer wrests the driver's revolver from him and studies the list of names. He notices there should be one more name on it. The cop steps up to the tent and approaches slowly, then orders the killer to drop his weapon. The killer complies under threat. The tranquility shatters in a heartbeat when the cop turns and shoots the driver in the back of the head. The final twist. The cop was the contractor all along, the unseen hand who first tried to kill the driver 10 years ago. He admits he only decided to get directly involved when the assassin failed his task at the old man's apartment. The cop explains the whole rotten knot. Gary's girlfriend had been his informant, feeding him details that allowed the crew to be picked off. Other informants working for him helped themselves to the stolen cash. The driver's crew had been betrayed from within. The killer, stunned, points to the list. The driver never even knew. After the shooting, the killer walks away into the cooling day. The cop tries to broker payment, offering money to close the circle he started, but the assassin refuses the fee. He makes a strange, almost ceremonial rule about his work. He charges $1 for contracts, treating killing more like a ritual or hobby than a business. Meanwhile, Detective Cicero races to the crime scene, piecing together the truth. Every informant in the case had one handler, the cop. It finally clicks. She calls the station and confirms he volunteered for the case himself elsewhere. The cop calls his ex, saying it's all over. The chaos, the guilt. He believes life can start fresh, but a sudden gunshot ends his word. The driver, still alive, thanks to the steel plate in his skull, delivers justice. The killer returns home to his wife, ready to let go. Cicero finds the cop's lifeless body, but hides the truth about his past. As the sun sets, the driver scatters his brother's ashes over the water and drives into the horizon, a man finally at peace. At the church, the preacher speaks of forgiveness, how even the lost can find redemption.